At the end of the day, even for a predatory fraudster, carrying out a successful fraud scheme is by no means an easy task. As a fraud examiner, you should understand that fact that fraud is not an easy task to carry. It is based on this that Wolf and Emerson 2004 came out with a modification to the three-leg fraud triangle, the traditional three-leg fraud triangle that we've been considering, that has motive or pressure. Then here it was even added the incentive. What is the incentive? Like, what is the gain? Those that the thing, motive, pressure, or incentive, could be any of these. Then the opportunity, which is the second leg of the tripod, then rationalization. He added a leg and made it diamond. That's why we call it fraud diamond, which is capability. From their own submission, capability is very key in executing a successful fraud scheme. Capability is talking about the capacity of the fraudster. What are the capacity of the fraudster? Big frauds, especially the very large frauds, they are centered around perpetrators' capability. An incapable, unintelligent fraudster will just forever be a will-be fraudster or an easily caught fraudster at his best. So if a fraud examiner needs to understand the place of capability and what are the things that makes a fraudster capable. Components of capability. What are the components of capability? Number one is position and function. From experience and from research, it's been seen that it is easier for people in high position to commit fraud and get away with and conceal it more than with junior staffs. In an organization, if there's going to be an a fraud of large momentum, it's going to be either from the MD, the people in the management executive, the director of finance, or people holding such position of trust. It will be very difficult to see just an ordinary clerk being able to go away or make away with such a large fraud that will become very material. So what are we saying? It will take either an individual person in a high position of authority in the organization whose function has or gives him that influence on decision making, on funds and flow of funds, on and control of assets. So that has given him that capacity and capability to commit fraud. So in other words, the higher the responsibility and the higher the position, the much watch, the much control should be placed around these positions and power. So this is talking to auditors, both internal and external, to watch closely people of position in an organization under fraud examination. The fraud can easily be traced to people at the end of affairs, because at the end of the day, they are called officers of responsibilities. Officers of responsibility. That means they must be held responsible. That's why if there's a fraud in a bank, for instance, now, you just see, even at the branch level, if once it's a big fraud running into billions, the person the EFCC goes to carry, or the regulatory, the law enforcement agent, is the MD of the bank, the CFO of the bank, because these are seen as the face of the company that have that power, not only the responsibility, have that authority, and once they misuse it, the result is fraud. Also, brain or intelligence. When you see very intelligent people, they can easily break down even very, very strict and well-formed control. They can easily break the wall of control with their intelligence. They can craft scheme over a period of time, years sometimes, and break the wall of control of the organization and make away with fraud. Once you see somebody with confidence and ego, that is, he's so confident, you never catch him unaware. He's so confident He's so confident of himself. Such people, in most cases, but not in all cases, they are people with ego as well, because he knows what he can do. He is so confident in himself, and sometimes he overvalues or he overestimates his own capacity as well. Such people they have the capacity to what? To carry out fraud, and fraud of large scale. Then we have coercion skills. If you see somebody who can coerce others into doing something that we otherwise not do, maybe as the head of the department, you can coerce people under you. Give me that now. Give me that money now. I will return. What is wrong with you? And all these things. You'll be fired. Another, these are easily people that can easily use that power and that capacity to commit fraud. Effective lying skills. So people are just pathological liars. You can never really get them. Even as an auditor, by the time you are examining or you are auditing a place and you ask for source documents and you see the sneaky movement of a particular person, or maybe you are an examiner or your fraud examiner, while carrying out your duty, you can see that the trickiness, the sloppiness, the trickiness of a particular officer that is so wise, yeah, he's so cunning, you can never really pin him down. Then you should be looking at that person. That person is a very high red alert, fraud red alert. Then immunity to stress. Fraud comes with stress. That is, you are sitting on a time bomb. You don't know, maybe an audit is ongoing. You don't know, maybe the external auditors that are coming at the end of the year will uncover your stuffs. You don't know, maybe the internal control will call for your documents and they will expose you. You don't know, maybe the consignment schemes you've put together, maybe they will actually survive the test of examination. So these people, despite this, if you can see somebody who can really bury the stress that these issues that I've highlighted can bring into a life, and you don't see the stress on them, they can really manage stress. They are still functioning well at their work. You are not seeing the impact of the stress of committing fraud on them. Then such people, they can really commit large-scale fraud. So that is about the fraud diamond. Its emphasis is on what? Is on the capability of the fraudster. When you see these things, you should know that the person you are dealing with is actually a very big red alert for fraud. So the second of its type is the triangle of fraud action. You can see is a modification of, it's not really a modification, let me say it's an extension, further explanation of the traditional fraud triangle. What are we trying to achieve under the fraud action? That is, what are the actions that a fraudster must perform? What are the actions that a fraudster must perform before he can actively commit fraud? You can see this traditional fraud triangle is actually talking about conditions under which fraud may occur. That is, all these conditions must align. It's not like the action. It's not talking about the active act that the fraudster will perpetrate before fraud is completed. It's talking about the first leg, that this condition, the motivation must be there, or the pressure, for instance, under the traditional fraud triangle. Then the opportunity must be there. That is, the opportunity to get away with it, to launch the attack, so to say. Then the rationalization. It is this rationalization that we replaced under the last class with personal integrity under the fraud scale. So now let's still maintain the rationalization for the purpose of this, because the fraud triangle is the traditional, is the basic. So we are just building on it. So what other action, now that all these conditions under the fraud triangle are in place, what are the actions? The man has not taken the action. He's been motivated or pressured. He has seen the opportunity. He has formulated the rationalization, the justification for his evil act by himself, but he has not taken the action. Now, what are the fraud action that he must take? What are the fraud action? Number one is the act, the execution methodology of the fraud. That is, what are the methods What are the methods he will use in carrying out his acts? What are the methods? Because it takes techniques, it takes action. The action is not just a broad daylight action, it's an action that must be strategic and well coordinated if he must be able to get away with it. So what are the actions that he must take? What are the steps he must take? Is it that, for instance, now a reimbursement? Let me use the simple example of reimbursement fraud, like an employee that went for a journey, or maybe he didn't end up even going at all, and he wants to be reimbursed for an expense he never made. He said he flew from, maybe he started to inspect the assets of the company all around, or just supervise staffs in the north and all in other areas of Nigeria. And he said, okay, by the time I left Sokoto, I was in Kaduna, I was in this, I was in that. And by the time he came back, he's coming with like 1 million naira flight ticket bill. Meanwhile, he didn't spend more than 200,000 naira. He wants 800,000 naira to as profit, as a fraud gain. So what are we saying? That is an action he wants to take. But how does he take it? He must get, for instance, now fake invoices, fake air flight tickets as what? As the evidence, the source document, the backing document, the proof for his actions, the proof for his actions, the proof for his fraud act. You understand? He must get all these things. Then the concealment. How does he conceal it? Part of the concealment is what? Is still the getting fake documents. Then he can go as ahead as saying, calling colluding with some of the boys in these other locations. Like if they call you, if there's any internal control person that ever calls that, when was the last time I visited your zone? I'm not coming to trouble you, because as a supervisor, for instance, when I come, I will raise issues. Just tell them, my guy, that I just came, I just left. You understand? That is concealment. He's trying to conceal his actions. So in 2 legs now, he has been able to cheat the organization. Now that he has been in the bad book, or in the wrong books of his subordinates, now they have the will, they have the blanket, the free check, the open check to do whatever they like there. They know their boss is as useless, as fraudulent as they could be. They might as well be doing whatever they want there, because they are now on the same page. If they too are fraudulent people, he has given them the license to be fraudulent. If they don't want to go to their work duties, their work post in their own respective locations, since he's not even going there to supervise them anyways, they won't go, and they know that he won't even have the moral grounds to rebuke them, because he's not even coming. How does he even supervise? Then secondly, now he's cheating the organization in terms of the cash, the extra cash he's getting from the organization. So what are we saying? The concealment act, the concealment, hiding the fraud act with false documents, false, if it is a corporate fraud, maybe with fraud journal entries. Maybe, for instance, now they want to hide expenses. They want to beef up their revenue as if there is a revenue. They want to make their financial statements look good. Wrong or fictitious, what's it called? And false journal entries could be put in place. False bank reconciliations. Maybe for an accounting department, in a case of a corporate fraud, where they will just do a reconciliation, that they will just manually tally the books where there are frauds. They put in this, adjust this, unpresented check. Meanwhile, there was no unpresented check anywhere. They will just add it to the books just to make their books better. These are concealment acts. Then the third part is the conversion act. The conversion act. How does it turn the ill-gotten gain into legitimate money? The high point of this is actually money laundering. And in most cases, we are not talking about petty funds here. We are talking about, for instance, in the public sector, as the minister or the permanent secretary or as the governor that has siphoned so much, how does it turn into a legitimate money? Somebody that came into office with less than an asset of 100 million naira, and by under 2 years is already worth more than 15 billion naira. How do you explain this? How do you, if there's an examination anywhere, how do you explain such fund in your account? It's only in Nigeria that people who were worth very little before we just come into office, and under a year they are building hotels all around the country, because we don't have the institutions that prevents and deter these things. You can't say before you enter, you are into government, you are worth 100 million naira, you have just one house to your name, and under 4 years you have house all over the country and all over the world. And after office, you are building this, building that, and you are launching this, contributing this, making this donation and all that. It's not just about making donation. So it's only here that people don't even make that big effort to convert. In advanced countries where there is high level of watch on and touchlight on corporate leaders and public leaders, they need to scheme, if at all they will go into fraud. Their conversion scheme must be top notch, because if you are caught, you are caught. The conversion scheme must be top notch. That is hiding. So these are the areas. It's telling us that as a fraud examiner, as a forensic accountant, apart from looking at the traditional fraud triangle, which is talking about the conditions, at the end of the day, these conditions are only useful they are more useful when you want to prevent fraud. Like, okay, what could be the motivation of people going into fraud, so that we don't employ such people, or we don't put such person in place of sensitive places that are sensitive, and what are the opportunities, the loopholes, what could the rationalization be? Or if we put the issue of personal integrity, now that we looked at in the former, class, now how do we get people of high integrity to position? These are just preventive, in most cases, conditions as it applies to the auditor or the forensic accountant or fraud examiner. But when it comes to detecting, you must be able to locate the acts. You must be able to see the concealment, filter out the concealment. Then you must be able to trace the conversion. Like, this is how it was converted. This is how this money went. Maybe you are a forensic accountant or fraud examiner for EFCC now. Where did the money go? Because until you are able to catch the money red-handed, you've not really proven your case. That, okay, after that money left the account of his cronies, different people, his child, his grandmother, paying into different accounts. They wired this money into a bank in Panama. And after that, they wired it from there to Switzerland. After that, it went into Bitcoin. After that, the Bitcoin was converted into stock. After that, the stock was sold after 6 months, and the proceeds was used to buy building materials that he used to build an hotel in Abuja. That money has been successfully laundered, but you must be able to trace it. That is one of the problems that we have when you see that a case just become moribund and forgotten about, because they were not effectively able to filter out the concealment and the conversion. They just saw the act, and you can't really prove the act totally until you get to the cycle of concealment and you end it with evidence of conversion. So that is the triangle of fraud for you. We are going from the preventive efforts, scheming our own preventive effort as it is under the fraud triangle, to looking at how the detection, the detective efforts, the detective points that a fraud examiner must put in place, what he must look at before a fraud can be well detected.